The letter from Stanford Medical School's admissions office sat unopened on my kitchen table for 3 hours before I found the courage to read it. I'd already been accepted to 5 other medical schools, but Stanford had been my dream since I was 12. Ever since Dr. Sarah Chen from Stanford's neurology department had saved my mother's life. My hands trembled as I finally tore open the envelope. The word congratulations made my vision blur with tears. I'd done it. All those late nights studying, all those extra biology courses, all those hours volunteering at the hospital, it had all paid off. I called my dad first, of course. He'd been my rock ever since Mom died 6 years ago, encouraging my dreams of becoming a doctor just like she had before her accident. "Stanford," he exclaimed when I told him. "Oh, honey, your mother would be so proud." I could hear the tears in his voice, matching my own. For a moment, it felt like Mom was there with us, sharing in this triumph she'd always believed I'd achieve. Then I heard Patricia's voice in the background. "Stanford? Robert, you know what that means. The tuition there is astronomical." My stepmother of 4 years had a way of turning every celebration into a practical discussion about money. I learned to tune it out most of the time, but today her words hit harder than usual because she wasn't wrong. Stanford's tuition was significantly higher than my other options. "We'll figure it out," Dad said firmly. "This is Sarah's dream school." "Figure it out how?" Patricia's voice grew closer. She must have taken the phone from Dad. "Sarah, be reasonable. You've got perfectly good offers from state schools that would cost half as much. Your father and I are trying to plan for retirement. We can't afford to bankrupt ourselves for your ambitions." The way she said ambitions made it sound like a character flaw. I swallowed hard. "I've got scholarships and I can take out loans for the rest. I was hoping Dad might be able to help with some of it." "Absolutely not," Patricia declared. "Robert, tell her. Tell her we can't throw away our savings on this fantasy of hers becoming some hotshot doctor. She'll probably drop out anyway. Do you know what the washout rate is for first-year medical students?" I heard Dad sigh, that familiar sound of surrender I had grown used to hearing whenever Patricia and I disagreed about something. "Sarah, honey, maybe we should discuss your other options. University of Michigan made you a very generous offer." "It's fine." I cut him off, my voice tight. "You're right. Stanford is expensive. I'll think about it." I hung up before either of them could hear the sob building in my throat. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the acceptance letter that should have represented my dreams coming true. Instead, it felt like a reminder of everything I couldn't have. The next morning, I woke up to several missed calls from Dad and a text message that made my stomach clench. "Patricia and I talked it over. We can help with tuition for Michigan or Minnesota, but Stanford is off the table. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Please be practical about this." I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the day researching every possible scholarship, grant, and loan option available. By evening, I had a plan. It would leave me with crushing debt, but Stanford was worth it. I'd make it work, with or without their help. When I finally called Dad back, Patricia answered his phone. "Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "I'm glad you called. I've been doing some research. Did you know that nearly 30% of medical students never finish their degree? All that debt, all that stress, and nothing to show for it. You're smart, but medical school is different. It's not just good grades and volunteering. Some people just aren't cut out for it." I gripped my phone tighter. "I am." "Oh, honey." Her patronizing tone made my teeth grind. "Everyone thinks that at first, but you've always been sensitive. The pressure would crush you. Why not consider something more suitable? Nursing maybe, or—" "I'm going to Stanford," I interrupted, surprised by the steel in my voice. "I don't need your permission or your money. I just thought you should know." "Don't be foolish," she snapped, dropping the concerned stepmother act. "You'll never make it as a doctor. You're too soft, too emotional, just like your mother was." The mention of my mother lit a fire in my chest. "Don't you dare talk about my mother. She believed in me. She knew I could do this." "And where is she now?" Patricia's words were pure acid. "Dead. Because she was too busy caring about other people's problems to watch where she was driving. Is that what you want? To throw your life away chasing some naive dream of helping people?" I heard Dad in the background asking what was wrong. But Patricia had already hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely see the screen as I blocked her number. Dad called back 10 minutes later. Sarah, Patricia says you were very rude to her. She's just trying to help. Help. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. She just told me Mom died because she cared too much about helping people. How is that helping? I'm sure she didn't mean it that way, Dad said weakly. She's concerned about your future. We both are. Medical school is such a huge commitment. Stop. I took a deep breath. Just stop. I'm going to Stanford. I'm doing this on my own. You don't have to support my decision, but please don't try to talk me out of it. There was a long pause. Sarah, I have to go, Dad. I have paperwork to fill out. That was 8 years ago. 8 years of grinding poverty as a medical student, of working part-time jobs between brutal study sessions, of eating ramen noodles and living in tiny apartments with too many roommates. 8 years of missed family holidays because I couldn't afford plane tickets home, of declined calls from Dad because I couldn't bear to hear Patricia's latest predictions of my inevitable failure. But I did it. Not only did I graduate from Stanford Medical School, I finished in the top 5% of my class. My residency in neurology turned into a fellowship studying rare autonomic disorders. Last month, I was offered a position as an attending physician at Stanford's Center for Rare Neurological Diseases, the youngest doctor ever hired for the program. I hadn't spoken to Patricia since that phone call 8 years ago, though Dad and I had managed to maintain a strained relationship through occasional phone calls and carefully worded emails. He knew I finished medical school and was working at Stanford, but I'd asked him not to share details of my life with his wife. As far as I was concerned, she was no longer part of my story. Then, on a busy Tuesday morning in the clinic, my world tilted sideways. Dr. Mitchell? My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. There's a call for you on line 3. It's your father. He says it's urgent. I almost let it go to voicemail. I had a waiting room full of patients, but something in my assistant's tone made me pause. Dad, I answered, already dreading whatever crisis had prompted this unexpected call. I'm at work. Can this wait? Sarah. His voice was rough, desperate. It's Patricia. Something's wrong with her. The doctor's here. They don't know what it is. She can't walk properly. Her heart rate is all over the place. She's having seizures. My medical brain kicked in automatically, cataloging symptoms. How long has this been going on? A few months. It started with dizziness, then weakness in her legs. The local doctors thought it was MS at first, but the tests were negative. Now they're saying it might be some kind of autonomic dysfunction, but no one here knows how to treat it. Sarah, please, she's getting worse. I need your help. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Patricia, who'd been so certain I'd never make it as a doctor, now needed my expertise in exactly the field she tried to discourage me from pursuing. Send me her medical records, I said finally. I'll review them and let you know if I think I can help. Thank you, Dad breathed. Sarah, I know things haven't been good between you and Patricia, but this isn't about her. I cut him off. I took an oath to help people who are sick. That's all this is. But as I hung up the phone, I knew that wasn't entirely true. This was about proving something to Patricia, to my father, and maybe most importantly, to myself. Little did I know, reviewing Patricia's case would uncover far more than just a rare medical condition. It would expose 8 years of lies, manipulation, and a betrayal that would shake our family to its core. Patricia's medical records arrived the next morning, hundreds of pages documenting her declining health over the past year. I spent my lunch break reviewing test results, consulting physician notes, and MRI scans. By early afternoon, I had a suspicion that made my blood run cold. The symptoms matched a rare condition I'd studied during my fellowship, autoimmune autonomic ganglionopathy, AAG. It's a disorder where the body's immune system attacks the autonomic nervous system, disrupting everything from heart rate to digestion. Left untreated, it can be fatal. But what caught my attention wasn't just the diagnosis, it was the timing. According to the records, Patricia's first symptoms had appeared almost exactly 8 years ago, right around the time she'd convinced my father not to help with my medical school tuition. I was staring at a brain scan when my office phone rang. Dr. Mitchell. Sarah? Patricia's voice was weak, nothing like the commanding tone I remembered. Your father said you'd look at my case. I'm reviewing your records now, I replied, keeping my voice professionally neutral. The doctors here are useless, she complained. None of them know what they're doing. But you're at Stanford. You must know someone who can help me. I closed my eyes, counting to 10. Actually, I don't need to refer you to anyone. I specialize in rare autonomic disorders. Based on your symptoms and test results, I believe you have AAG. There was a long pause. But you're so young. Surely there's someone more experienced. I'm the youngest attending physician ever hired by Stanford Center for Rare Neurological Diseases, I said, allowing myself a small moment of satisfaction. But if you prefer another opinion, I can certainly recommend some colleagues. No. The panic in her voice was clear. Please, Sarah. Help me. I scheduled her for admission the following week. The night before she was due to arrive, I sat in my apartment reviewing her complete medical history again. Something wasn't adding up. Most AAG cases develop rapidly, with severe symptoms appearing within weeks. Patricia's case had progressed unusually slowly, with mild symptoms documented sporadically over 8 years. Unless I pulled up her prescription history. There it was, regular prescriptions for prednisone, a corticosteroid dating back 8 years. She'd been treating herself for years without telling anyone. But how had she known to take prednisone? And how had she gotten the prescriptions? I dug deeper into her records, cross-referencing dates and names until I found it. 8 years ago, she'd seen a neurologist who'd suspected AAG, but she'd refused the recommended tests and treatments. She'd known. All this time, she'd known she was sick. The next morning, I waited in my office while Dad got Patricia settled in her hospital room. My hands shook slightly as I reviewed her admission paperwork one last time. 8 years of hidden illness, of secret prescriptions, of slowly worsening symptoms she tried to control on her own rather than admit she needed help. Rather than admit she needed my help. A knock at my door made me look up. Dad stood there, looking older than I remembered, worry etched deep in his face. Sarah, he started, then stopped, his eyes taking in my office. The diplomas on the wall, the academic awards, the framed journal articles with my name as lead author. I had no idea. You've done so well for yourself. No thanks to you, I said quietly. He flinched. I know. I should have supported you more. Should have stood up to Patricia when she what, Dad? I interrupted, pulling out the file I compiled. When she convinced you not to help with my tuition. When she told me I'd never make it as a doctor. Or when she was diagnosed with AAG 8 years ago and decided to hide it from everyone. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? I handed him the records. She's known she was sick since the beginning. She's been secretly treating herself with steroids for years, managing the symptoms just enough to hide them. But now the disease has progressed too far for that to work anymore. Dad sank into a chair, flipping through the pages with trembling hands. But why? Why would she hide something like this? I think I know why. I leaned forward. Dad, do you remember exactly when Patricia started arguing against helping you with medical school? He nodded slowly. It was right after you got accepted to Stanford. She'd been supportive before that, but suddenly she changed her mind. Said it was too expensive, too risky. And when did she first see the neurologist who diagnosed her AAGE? 2 weeks before that. Oh God. She knew she was sick, I said softly. Knew she had a rare condition that would eventually require expensive medical care. So when I got into Stanford, she chose her own medical needs over your education. Dad finished, his voice hollow. She knew the money would have to come from somewhere. And she couldn't bear the thought of needing help from the stepdaughter she'd always looked down on. I added. So she hid her condition, took just enough medication to mask the symptoms, and convinced you I wasn't worth the investment. Dad put his head in his hands. I'm so sorry, Sarah. Dad's eyes widened as he checked the dates. I should have seen through it. Should have supported you anyway. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But that's not what matters right now. What matters is that Patricia needs proper treatment and I'm the best person to provide it. He looked up, his eyes wet. After everything she did, you'd still help her? I'm a doctor, Dad. That means something to me, even if Patricia never understood what it meant. I stood up, gathering my files. Now let's go see my patient. Patricia was propped up in the hospital bed, looking small and pale against the white sheets. Her eyes widened when I walked in, wearing my white coat with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Department of Neurology, embroidered on the pocket. Sarah, she breathed. You look so professional. That's because I am a professional, I replied, pulling up her charts on the computer. Now let's discuss your condition. The one you've known about for 8 years. She went rigid. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? I turned the screen toward her. Should we discuss your regular prednisone prescriptions, or the neurologist report from 2016 that you never showed Dad? The one that diagnosed you with AAG. How dare you go through my private medical records? She sputtered. I'm your doctor, I reminded her. That's literally my job. The job you were so certain I'd never be capable of doing. Dad stepped forward. Patricia, is this true? Did you know you were sick when you convinced me not to help Sarah with medical school? Patricia's face crumpled. I was scared. The doctor said AAG would eventually require specialized treatment, expensive medications. We needed to save money for my medical care. I couldn't let you waste it all on her education. Waste it? Dad's voice rose. Our daughter's dream was a waste to you. Stepdaughter, Patricia corrected automatically, then seemed to realize her mistake as Dad took a step back from her bed. Your AAG is advanced but treatable, I said, keeping my voice professionally detached. You'll need plasmapheresis to remove the harmful antibodies, followed by immunosuppressive therapy. It's an aggressive treatment protocol with significant risks and side effects. The total cost, even with insurance, will be substantial. Patricia went pale. How? How much? I pulled a document from my coat pocket, a statement showing my remaining student loan balance. About twice what my Stanford tuition would have cost. She stared at the number, hands shaking. We can't afford this. No, I agreed. You can't. But fortunately for you, I recently received a substantial research grant to study novel treatments for autoimmune autonomic disorders. As principal investigator, I can enroll qualified patients in clinical trials at no cost. Hope flickered across her face. You'd do that? For me? After everything? I'm offering you a chance at proper treatment, I said carefully. But there are conditions. First, you'll participate in a support group for patients with chronic illnesses. You need to learn to accept help instead of hiding your condition. She nodded quickly. Second, you'll attend family therapy with Dad and me. We have 8 years of damage to work through. Dad stepped closer to my side. That's non-negotiable, Patricia. And finally, I pulled out one last document. You'll sign this statement acknowledging that you deliberately concealed your medical condition and manipulated Dad into withdrawing financial support for my education. I don't plan to use it for anything. I just want you to admit what you did. Patricia stared at the paper for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached for a pen. I was wrong about you, she whispered as she signed. You're not too soft to be a doctor. You're formidable. I know, I said simply. Now let's discuss your treatment plan. That was 6 months ago. Patricia's condition has improved significantly with proper treatment, though she'll need ongoing care for the rest of her life. The support group has been good for her. She's learning to be vulnerable, to accept help instead of seeing it as weakness. Family therapy is challenging. Years of resentment and betrayal don't heal overnight. But we're talking, really talking, for the first time in years. Dad has apologized countless times for not standing up for me, for letting Patricia's manipulation cloud his judgment. He's trying to make amends by setting up a scholarship fund at Stanford Medical School for students interested in studying rare diseases. As for me, I'm thriving in my role at Stanford, continuing my research while treating patients with complex autonomic disorders. Last week, I was asked to give a guest lecture to first-year medical students about perseverance in the face of adversity. I shared my story, not to shame Patricia, but to show them that sometimes the people who doubt you the most end up needing you the most. Yesterday, I received a card from Patricia. Inside was a check for $50,000, money she'd apparently been saving separately from Dad all these years. Toward your student loans, the note read, I can never undo the harm I caused, but I can try to make it right. Thank you for saving my life, even though I tried to stand in the way of yours. You're not just a good doctor, you're a better person than I ever was. I haven't decided if I'll cash the check yet. The money would help. But this isn't about money anymore. It's about healing, not just Patricia's physical condition, but our family's deep emotional wounds. Mom used to say that being a doctor wasn't just about treating symptoms. It was about treating a whole person, understanding their fears and hopes and pain. As I watch Patricia slowly rebuild trust with Dad, as I see her finally acknowledge her own vulnerability, I think I understand what Mom meant. Sometimes the hardest people to heal are the ones closest to us. But maybe that's exactly why we need to try.